With two high picks in round 1 and 2, plenty of holes to fix on both sides of the ball, the Jets can reshape this team, but will they go for a dominance in the trenches or explosive weapons? We're here to break it all down, guys. What's up, Jet fans? I'm Julian Locasto, joined by my co-host, as always, Nick Perry, and this is the Gang Green Report. If you're tuning in, hit that like button on the way in and subscribe if you're new so you can stay up to date with all things related to the New York Jets this offseason. Today, we're going to be diving into the Jets draft dilemma, whether they're going to go in the trenches or whether they're going to go after a weapon. What should Darren Mougey prioritize in rounds 1 and 2? Let's dive in, guys. First, I want to start off with talking about the offensive line. Let's start with the trenches. You know, the offensive line has been a problem for the Jets for the last several seasons. But this past year, the Jets had one of the better offensive lines in all of football because of guys like veteran tackle Morgan Moses and newcomer John Simpson coming over from the Ravens. And it really helped solidify the offensive line this last season. Simpson actually being one of the biggest surprises of the two. The Jets also got back one of their best young guys in Elijah Vera Tucker, who missed most of the 2023 season due to an injury and paved the way for guys like left tackle Olu Fashanu to essentially be our left tackle of the future. They ended up finishing 2024 ranked in the top 10 of PFF's O-line rankings, and there's a lot to be excited since the Jets have 4 of their 5 starters solidified for next season. However, this also leaves a major problem. We've talked about this in the past with the Jets needing a new right tackle this season. Morgan Moses ultimately leaving the Jets to sign a 3-year deal with the New England Patriots. That leaves a big hole at right tackle. We also brought in Chukwuma Okorafor from the Patriots to essentially be somebody that could compete for that right tackle job, but he's essentially being looked at as a stopgap option at best. Glenn is coming from a Lions team that is built through the offensive line, have built up a top 5 unit in football. If the plan is to run the ball like I believe we're going to do with Aaron Glenn, we might see a need for the Jets to potentially attack right tackle either in day 1 or day 2 of the draft. Nick, what are your thoughts on our current offensive line as we stand now?
Yeah, I think currently I believe we have like one of our best spot we've been in with the Jets offensive line since like the heyday, being anchored down by Nick Mangold, Ferguson, all those kind of guys that we came to love so well, and we were pretty good with them there. So it shows that you need that good offensive line. Like we stated multiple times, yes, we're missing a big hole at the right tackle position, and I'm also fully on board with drafting a guy in the first round like a Membu or a Campbell, if he's possibly there. I doubt he will be there, but if he is there, pro day went great. Everybody's worried about those arm measurements. He checked out just fine. I think it was like 34. So, I mean, I think adding that certified day 1 first round starter would be huge for us in this draft this year, just because of Fields even more confident in the offensive line. I hope would make him more confident behind the offensive line and give him more time to throw. Like you stated, if we move into a more run-heavy offense, which I think all Jets fans are kind of banking on, then this is the most important position on the board for us, without a doubt, and we need to attack it right away in that first round. I think we keep building this line, getting depth, getting more experience out of Tippmann and Olu, and really get this core group together for a long time. And we have done it in our drafts multiple times. Also, just double dip at offensive line is also good.
Yeah, I think like the biggest concern with Jet fans is mainly like we've used so many first round picks on offensive linemen. Like we want to like see if we're actually like these successful, programs where they've been able to attack the offensive line later in the draft and actually be able to get good quality starters in the draft. So I think that's probably like the biggest concern. And then obviously if we move on to the other side of the trenches on the defensive side of the ball, while the Jets have added to this room with guys like Derek Nadi, Jay Tufele, Byron Kowar, and Rashad Weaver, we still had some big time questions on this defensive line going into the offseason. We obviously have our cornerstone pieces in Quinnen Williams and Will McDonald, who had a really big breakout sophomore year with 10.5 sacks. But we have to remember that Jermaine Johnson is coming off the Achilles rupture from last season. Before that, he was coming off of a Pro Bowl selection, 7.5 sacks, 55 tackles, 11 tackles for loss. But who knows if he's actually going to be ready for the season or if he'll be the same player that he was. Another dominant edge presence, or even more importantly, a disruptive interior defensive lineman opposite of Quinnen Williams could elevate this defense even more with a dominant force in our division like Josh Allen being in that division, you need to find somebody that's going to be a disruptor for him and just stop the run and just be able to get to the quarterback in general. The Jets could look to add another piece to the defensive line in the first or second round to make sure that the defense is more well-rounded, since Joe Douglas completely dismantled this group. It was one of the better groups in football 2-3 seasons ago, and he just completely destroyed it. The defense is what has kept us in games in the past couple seasons and the past season itself, and it took a big step back last year. Nick, what are your thoughts on the state of our defensive line group as it stands?
Yeah, I feel like I have faith in our D line. I feel like we always have faith in our D line, and I continue to have faith in our D line. I think with those key additions, with like the speed from Weaver and the power from Nadi, I think we are moving in the right direction of the line that we need. But we need to get back to that dominant force we were like 2 seasons ago. Bryce Huff, all those kind of guys obviously left to go to the Eagles, JFM to the Broncos, whole bunch of guys. And like you said, 2 seasons ago, he absolutely just blew up that line, which I think everybody was kind of head scratching about. I think we need to hit on the edge in the draft for sure, which I think will come in a later round. We're not going to go super high up with this pick, but it is a deep draft in the position. So I think we can strike gold here for sure. Even if it's a developmental guy, we can definitely get somebody going. I think regarding Jermaine Johnson coming back, I'm excited. And I think he is hungry to come back, and he'll be ready to go to hunt down Josh Allen, which is what he's best at when he's on the field, and exactly why we brought him in. So I feel like defensive line is always that one that we're like, all right, we're pretty good. And I think we'll keep adding on to that for sure. Because I mean, look at the dominant line Aaron Glenn had in Detroit. I mean, it was unreal. Unfortunately, a lot of injuries, but unbelievable before those injuries. So I think he'll continue that presence with the Jets as well.
Yeah, I mean, the hope is obviously with better coaching, you get better, output out of all these guys. I definitely do think the interior of the defensive line is the biggest need. Obviously, Nadi has experience being on a championship roster, but, he's also been several seasons removed from where he was when he was an actual force on that Chiefs defense. He's been kind of taken out of the equation the last couple of years, more of a depth guy. So I definitely think, like you said, though, this draft is extremely deep when it comes to the defensive line in general. We could definitely be using that to attack that need in the draft. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to switch a little bit of gears, talk about the weapons. We talked about the trenches. That's the one side of the equation. I want to switch gears a little to the weapons. Fortunately, the Jets, we have Garrett Wilson, stable, he's our stable thoroughbred, and we have a couple of guys in the stables at the running back position with Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis at our running back room, but that's about it when it comes to the weapons on this team. Allen Lazard hasn't lived up to the contract, probably going to be on his way out as soon as Rodgers makes his decision on his landing spot. Malachi Corley, we don't really know what he is yet. He might be a fringe guy that can, do something with this offense. We made a video on him recently about that topic. Tyler Johnson, Brandon Smith, depth pieces at best, but they're young and they have some upside, so you never know what you're going to get out of those guys. And I'm not even going to mention Xavier Gibson because I'm still wondering why he's even on this roster. Because outside of that kick return touchdown for the win against the Bills a couple seasons ago, like, he has not been a productive wide receiver, and he is not a good special teamer whatsoever. So with our new head coach, Aaron Glenn, who brought over a young, inexperienced play caller coming from an explosive offense in Detroit, we also signed a young, explosive quarterback in Justin Fields that will inevitably bring some excitement to this offense at the least, but he needs more weapons around him to make this offense go. The Jets let go of Tyler Conklin, ended their time with Devontae Adams. The Jets have an opportunity to give Fields another dynamic threat in rounds 1 or 2. A top-tier pass catcher, whether it's from the tight end position or the wide receiver. So we're guys like Tyler Warren, Ted McMillan, two big names that could go early in round 1 to the Jets as playmakers and pass catchers who would open up a whole new dimension of this offense. Adding a wide receiver 2 or tight end 1 could immediately make the Jets offense more explosive and set them up for years to come. Imagine Wilson and a new weapon on the field with Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Justin Fields. That could be a nightmare of a dual threat offense for the Jets and could operate out of the season. Nick, what do you think of our current weapons that are currently rostered on the Jets? What are you thinking about them going on right now?
Yeah, I feel like I like the weapons we have. Obviously, I don't think we're all thrilled about them.
Yeah.
But we are severely lacking in that wide receiver room and the tight end room, especially the tight end room. I like the pick at 7 to get it. If now we're switching gears to the offensive side, if we're thinking more GM hat for offense, I do like the pick at 7 to get a playmaker for the offense. And Justin to take eyes off of Garrett, let him play a little bit more free, let him be that joystick wide receiver that we love so much. I really think Corley can be a good core piece, like you just mentioned, hopefully, and like our previous video, for us, as well as we touched on, like we touched on the other day for being Corley. I think then with regard to the running backs, I think we can get, we have a nice stacked room, especially with Brees and Braylon, with their speed and running power and size, who can take us to the new heights, especially if the pass game going with adding a weapon at that number 7 pick. So I'm not confident with it right now with our room, but after the draft, I think we can be in a good and safe position with weapons, especially getting that Tet or that Tyler Warren or one of these threats on the offensive side of the ball, which would be great for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point, it's like, so the big question is, what should the Jets prioritize in the draft? It's a tough question because both sides of the ball are really crucial. If they're heavy in the trenches, they're building for long-term sustainability. The offensive line still has a hole to fill, and building that up could entirely, fix the offense for the future. Obviously having Justin Fields at quarterback, and, even if he's not the answer, whoever our long-term quarterback option is, having that stability at the offensive line position does a lot for you. On the defensive side, adding more pressure up front could make the Jets defense more formidable, bring us back to where we were with that elite defense. If you add somebody next to Quinnen Williams, you're allowing those guys are going to double team, triple team Quinnen most of the time. So if you have other guys that are successful on that offensive line that are actual threats, it makes the defensive line more formidable, especially when he's at commanding double teams. But if we decide to focus on weapons, it's all about immediate impact. A dynamic playmaker could change the entire trajectory of the offense. With Fields under center, they might have a smaller window to make a playoff push while he's still young and on the rise. I think it could be done. I think at this point in time, the question is, what gives the Jets the better chance to win, not only in 2025, but beyond, whether that's a dominant line or an explosive playmaker? In my opinion, I like the Jets attacking right tackle in round 1 or taking a tight end if they really like Warren at 7. If they attack right tackle in round 1, I'd like to see them go wide receiver in round 2. I just think, the upside is there for a lot of the wide receivers in round 2 of this draft. I don't think there's a lot of value deeper into the draft. There are some guys that might go, but then I also see those guys going a lot higher than they're projected as well. This is not a very top-end heavy wide receiver draft like the season prior. You're going to get guys you might get 1 or 2 wide receivers in round 1, or maybe even 3 if we're counting Golden. Yeah, Golden and Tet McMillan are probably the 2 biggest wide receiver names. I don't know if you count Hunter as a wide receiver, but those are 3 guys that right off the bat will probably go round 1. Other than that, I don't see a lot of receivers going in round 1. I see a lot of these guys being day 2 guys. So you guys that I specifically like are like Jaden Higgins, Alec Ayomanor, Trey Harris, Jalen Royals. Those are just to name a few, but I just think that Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey need to go out and get their guys in the draft. The first 2 picks alone will tell you a lot about how they're going to define their style of play, culture, and I think that is going to be hard-nosed, smash-mouth approach on offense, and the same with defense. They're going to come at you. They're going to try to get pressure, and they're also going to have playmakers in the back end that can make plays, which is why I think Warren or Membu will likely be the pick at 7. I think those are 2 guys that just scream hard-nosed, smash-mouth football players. And we'll see the Jets attack other positions in the mid to late rounds. Like I said, if it's my way right now, if he's on the board, I think Membu makes a lot of sense at 7 just because of the hole that we have at right tackle. And then I'd like them to attack wide receiver in round 2 with either of the guys that I named. And then you can attack. There will be tight ends in round 3. There will be really good. That's another stacked group that's going to be really good in this draft. So I think you can get a tight end in round 3 and then address defense later on in the later rounds. Any good team or any good scouting staff that's worth their salt will find talent in the later rounds. Nick, what's your thought on this, and what are your opinions on the Jets draft strategy overall?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it multiple times. I think I'm more heavy on taking like that tight end in Warren. I feel like you can't go wrong. But I think that having that established offensive line, like we just talked about, is so important, especially with that new quarterback coming in. And like you said, there's so much talent out there. And if there's a good scout, they're not going to miss that talent. And
Yeah.
same with tight end. There's just so many tight ends out there that you can go with if you're looking for a more explosive, dynamic guy. You're going a fan, and if you're looking for high, obviously tight end, Tyler Warren. If you want a little bit good athlete, also big body, Ferguson. I mean, there's just so many options. The more we come to it, the more I do like Tyler Warren, but the more I'm like, all right, Membu at line, like solidify your line. What does every good championship team have? A solidified line every year. Keeps the quarterback clean, has an explosive run game. I mean, look at the Eagles, the most explosive run game. Saquon's a different breed of a running back, but just a absolutely beast of a line, and opens up those holes, gives Jalen time to throw, give Justin time to throw for us now. And I like what you said, that you go out there and get their guys, get who you want. And I think that's gonna be huge for us. And like Aaron Glenn, who has that scouting ability, or used to be a scout in his former days, that he's going to go out there again to these pro days, find who they want, be on the same team with Darren. I think the strategy is a lot different than what we're used to, which I kind of like. You always feel like you know who you're going to take with the Jets, especially since we've been as high as 2 before. But I mean, being at 7 is definitely like a toss-up. I definitely like this strategy more now, and getting into it, but I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jet fans, what do you think about this? Should the Jets focus on building the trenches or give Justin Fields weapons? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe if you're new, and as always, guys, go Jets.